Hello, this is your required reading for the fall semester. First off, we have to start with the book club books. At this point, if you're not in the book club, you are missing out. You're missing out on reading what has historically been some of the worst books any of us have ever touched, and you're also missing out on our Halloween-themed nicknames. What are you doing? In October, we're reading What Hunger by Katherine. This is a new-ish release about a young woman who's terrified at the prospect of being left alone in her home with her traumatized parents when her brother leaves for university. I'm always forcing myself to read horror novels with a food motif, even though they never work for me. I think I'm looking for the one that works, and I just won't accept that that's not something that works for me. And now I can take 1,000 people along with me on the journey. But this one does look promising. It deals with rage and intergenerational trauma and mother-daughter relationships through body horror. Sign me up. In November, we're reading Tinfoil Butterfly by Rachel Eve Moulton, which I saw exactly one review describe as layered, which is what you want in a book club book. Tinfoil Butterfly follows a woman hitchhiking across the United States trying to escape her troubled past when she runs into this creepy, abandoned little town with a creepy, abandoned little boy who steals her gun, pulls her into his world, and forces her to confront her violent past. I think it plays with reality and the concept of evil, and it could either be incredible or absolutely awful, and the fun thing about running a book club is that you get to make people take that leap with you. If you want to join the coolest, weirdest gay people on the planet and read these books with us, then you need to do that. And also, if you want to follow along with this required reading list, someone will definitely make a storygraph challenge, and then we're all going to compete viciously against each other. So if you're interested in that as well, link in video description. Join the fucking book club. Okay, first we're going to talk about books that I have already read and can recommend to you as having impeccable fall vibes. We're going to start with The Stepford Wives by Ira Levin. This is a foundational horror text without reading as like a really traditional horror book or feeling like it's old in its language or dated in its themes. If you don't already know, The Stepford Wives follows Joanna and her family who move to the town of Stepford, and she very quickly notices that something is deeply wrong in this town, specifically with the women who live here. This is a very short read, and it packs a fucking punch. The tension builds beautifully. Not a single word is unaccounted for. It's all so very deliberate. I thought the reveal was satisfying no matter where in the story you figure it out. It somehow manages to strike this perfect, impossible balance where if you figure it out early, it doesn't feel like it's over-explained to you once the narrator understands it, but it still explains it enough that it doesn't leave you confused if you're learning it at the same time she does. People who think that men are incapable of writing women should read this book. Ira Levin thoroughly understands his narrator's point of view, and he represents a really authentic feeling and never preachy or dumbed down every woman's feminism. If you haven't read The Stepford Wives, you'll see its influences everywhere once you're done with it, and that alone makes this 100-something page book worth it. But it also feels like a masterpiece in restraint, and it's the form of novella idealized. And aside from all of that, it's compelling and it's also fun. Next on the list is not a short book, but it is my quintessential fall read, and that is The Sharts by Bret Easton Ellis. I read this at the end of September last year, and for the last 12 months, I have been desperately searching for something that could come even close to matching the feeling that The Sharts gave me. While I don't believe that this is a perfect book by any means, and it doesn't necessarily come to my mind when I think of what my favorite books are, there is no other book that has left such an impact on me, that I have found so incredibly unforgettable. I've never remembered anything so vividly. When I think about this book, I am transported back into the world of The Sharts so immediately that it's jarring. The Sharts is really hard to describe. It's both a horror and a thriller, and also quite literary, but then extremely, shockingly violent in a way that made me genuinely nauseous. It follows an auto-fictional version of Bret Easton Ellis as an upper-class high schooler in LA in the 80s, and this character is extraordinarily paranoid, both about a serial killer in the area who seems to be targeting Bret's group of friends, and about keeping himself in the closet. It is 600 pages, and though it has a plot, I'm not going to pretend to you that you don't feel all 600 of those pages, but feeling them also means that you live in the world of this book for a long time, and it's extremely atmospheric. You get to know and understand these characters and anticipate how they'll react to things and how they'll feel, and they literally stay inside of you. I know that sounds corny, but I can't describe it any other way. Everyone who I've talked to about this book has felt similarly. It is very much a tense, scary, gory, upsetting horror for fall book, but it's also extraordinarily impactful, more so than any book I have ever read and probably ever will read, and I implore you to give it a shot and to push through his endless descriptions of music and location and fashion, because even though it can get very tiring in those parts, they are also meaningful like the rest of the book. I remember having to take laps around my house when I was reading this book. It gets to you. It gets under your fucking skin Nothing is like it. If you know anything even remotely like this book, please let me know, because I desperately need something that will live up to the shards. Next up, I'm recommending Supper Club by Lara Williams. I'm not 100% sure when this book is set, but a lot of it is the main character's memories of her very isolated, lonely time at university, where she was desperate for a friend group and also unable to bring herself to do things that would allow that to happen, even to like accept invitations to things. It's both very frustrating and deeply relatable. The current timeline in Supper Club follows the main character as she and her friend create this, you might guess, supper club, where a group of women break into buildings and feast until they're sick. They act like rabid, wild animals. They let their inhibitions go. Now, that is a great concept, and it's executed well, but the draw of this book is really the characters. I felt uncomfortably close to the narrator the entire time I was reading this. I thought it was a very realistic depiction of like depression and social anxiety without being explicitly about those things in an annoying, forced way. All the women in this story were really well developed and interesting, and their dynamics and how they shifted and warped were impossible to look away from through the entire thing. The next book on this list is in here because its setting in academia makes it feel incredibly fall adjacent, as does its disturbing story and horrifying narrator, and that's Loner by Teddy Wayne. Loner follows this absolutely socially incapable dork loser of a narrator who I hate with my whole fucking heart. His name is David, and he's in his first year at Harvard University, and he's the kind of person who thinks so highly of himself and has literally nothing to offer, but he believes that he inherently deserves to be liked and welcomed and appreciated while doing literally nothing and caring about no one other than himself. Kind of like the worst version of the narrator in Supper Club, where she won't put an effort in because she's so depressed she can't bring herself to do it. He won't put an effort in because he thinks everybody should be on their hands and knees begging him to hang out with them. And frighteningly, David is in love with a fellow student who hasn't even looked in his direction, and he awkwardly and horribly, all while thinking that he's being so suave and cool, forces his way into this woman's life. Despite her very obvious disinterest and even disgust with him, she's using him to write her essays, and you know that she's taking advantage of him, but he refuses to believe it. And it's not like he's this innocent, unaware cherub who we should feel sorry for. He's an entitled incel. It's both thrillingly frustrating and absolutely exhausting being inside David's head. And the entire book is so tense because you know how much he's capable of, and you know that he'll go to insane lengths to get what he wants. And what he wants is affection from a woman, and that is absolutely frightening. It's also tense because of the secondhand embarrassment of the way David acts. It's very much a book that you will be reading through your fingers the whole time. Okay, next on the list is a silly little gothic read, and that's Victorian Psycho by Virginia Feito. I don't think this was the greatest feat of literature ever created, but I do think it was a bit of a romp. It was a fun time. It's set in the 1800s with a woman who's a fucking maniac working as a governess for a wealthy family. She has a dark and sordid past, an over-exaggerated voice, and a fucking agenda. The book isn't taking itself too seriously, so it's not like you're dragging yourself through Jane Eyre, but you still get some of that strong sense of setting. It's not like good with a capital G, but it's not really trying to be. It's easy to read and to follow and to wince at all of the ways the narrator breaks the social customs of the rich and her increasingly violent tendencies. It's short, it reads very quickly, so I think it deserves a spot on this list despite not quite reaching the heights of the other ones. Speaking of heights reached, let's talk about a completely different book with a completely different vibe, and that's Geek Love by Katherine Dunn. Now, I just recently summarized and reviewed this in depth, so I'll try to stop myself from getting too bogged down in the details here, but this is one of the best books that I have ever read in my life. I don't think I'll ever stop thinking about this, and I love it with my whole heart. Though this was in the summer reading list, I'm making the case for it as a fall book because that's how it feels to me. It's fall to me. Maybe because it's orange. It could be as simple as that. Geek Love follows the daughter of two circus runners who created their own freak show by disabling their children. Really, it's about the dynamics within the family, the jealousy, the competition, the sick and twisted love, their ambitions, the power and control, the manipulation. And those dynamics are endlessly fascinating because there has never been a more astoundingly well-developed cast of characters in the history of fiction. I feel like I got to know these siblings so well, and it's that really good writing where something will happen and it'll strike fear into your heart because you know the characters well enough to know how they're going to react to it. It's like this insane family drama dialed up to 10,000. It also has really interesting, nuanced things to say about disability, which I loved. This book, on the whole, was just very thoughtful and then also absolutely horrifying at the same time. Best of the best. Go read Geek Love by Katherine Dunn if you're going to read anything on this list. Next is a book that I just recently read and will be posting a full review of probably next week, and that is Open Wide by Jessica Gross. This is a new-ish release. I think it came out in August. I don't really want to give you anything about this. I'm just going to be a little bit coy when I'm telling you the summary here. I think you should go into it as blind as possible. This follows a woman named Olive who works as a radio host, and she's obsessed both with recording every interaction she has on a hidden recorder and also with her new boo, Theo, who is a surgeon. Crazy fucking stuff happens. It's really intense being inside Olive's head because she's extremely unwell in the relationship department, and her mom has fucked her up in this really unique way where she loves her daughters too much and is too positive and like overwhelmingly interested in them. Every relationship in this book feels very real and complex and deliberate. It explores boundaries and consent and intimacy and desire in really interesting, albeit sometimes kind of on the nose ways. It's a bit bleak and gloomy and set in New York City, and while it takes place over a little less than a year, I think, it feels very fall the whole time. The next book I'm assigning you is Hot Springs Drive by Lindsay Hunter. This is a literary thriller told from a whole bunch of different perspectives of family members from two different families who are next door neighbors and also like friends. There's a shocking act of violence involving both of these families that reverberates its impact through all of them. It's an alternating perspective book that manages to keep you interested in each perspective throughout the chapter and then also absolutely gags you when you get to the next chapter and see whose perspective is next. This has the devastating yearning of a first love. It's got vicious jealousy. It's got terrible parenting. It's got frighteningly creepy little boys who grow up into underestimated, dangerous young men. It's got secrets. It's got pain and suffering, and it's a good story and solid writing. I kind of just like snuck this in when I was pulling books off the shelf, but that's going to be Stone Butch Blues by Leslie Feinberg. This to me is a fall book because I read it in fall quite a few years ago, and I sort of want to reread this. Though I think that says bad things about my mental state. I'm not going to say anything more. I talk about Stone Butch Blues in every fucking video, but I think it's a good fall book. Okay, my last recommendation has got to be Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. October's in like 3 days. I mean, it's Frankenstein. What more do I really need to say to you about Frankenstein? I'm sorry about how kind of awful this version of it is. I just didn't have one, and this is the first one I found that wasn't that horrible, like on-demand print one that I see fucking everywhere. So I said that I don't need to say much about this because you probably know Frankenstein, but I think if you haven't read it, you only think you know Frankenstein. If you haven't read the book, it will surprise you, and it's very much a foundational text. I see the whispers of Frankenstein everywhere I look ever since finishing it. Of course, it is from 1818, and you better be reading the 1818 version, so it can be a little dense, but it will hold your attention. It will captivate you, and it's so worthwhile to read even the boring parts of this. You can feel the significance of the text in such a vivid way. Once you've got into it, it's really hard to put down. And it also has so much to say about creation and religion and monstrosity and alienation and being gay. Who said that? Okay, Frankenstein leads us into my first subcategory of books on our shared TBR for the next couple of months. Autumn is a time of year that I will always associate with school, with academia. It also feels to me like a fresh start, even more so than the beginning of the year, I think because there's a season change where I live. I'm not in school this semester for the first time in 20 years, which is absolutely insane. And part of me does still want to tend to that drive to learn that comes back every semester. So characteristically, I'm throwing in a couple of classics on this list, knowing damn well I'm not going to read them. And uncharacteristically, I'm throwing in a couple of nonfiction books on this list, also knowing damn well I'm not going to read them. Orlando by Virginia Woolf is first in the classics department. This is a rare book that I have been wanting to read forever, but have been saving for the fall. Usually I just read whatever I want, and I don't really care what season it is. But I want to read this. I mean, okay, first, hugely because I absolutely adore the edition I have. I think it's the perfect size to hold. I think it's beautiful and gorgeous and worn, and I just love it. I also want to be seen reading this. I think this is just the perfect edition to do some performative reading with. Don't tell me I'm wrong. Orlando is a work of Woolf's that I have been hearing about for years. I have read Mrs. Dalloway, and I found myself more than pleasantly surprised. I was delighted by it. I absolutely loved it, and I actually enjoyed rereading it for an essay, which is not something that I typically enjoy. Orlando, I think, is a huge feat of a novel. The story spans many centuries. It's also like the great gender-bent novel following a male lead who one day wakes up as a woman. It's like as explicitly transgender as it can be without being explicitly transgender in the way we recognize today. And it's also gay, and I'm pretty sure an ode to her lifelong lesbian lover, the woman who wrote I am reduced to a thing that wants Virginia, which always sends fucking shivers down my spine. Though I don't think I really want to read all of Woolf's published letters between her and Saxville West, because something just feels kind of voyeuristic about that. Next, we have another short classic. These are all relatively short classics. This one I think is a little bit more realistic. I think I might read this one. That's Picnic at Hanging Rock, which is a book that I've recently heard Anna Wallace Johnson talking about, and of course she made it sound so interesting. This is an Australian classic, which intrigues me because the Australians are some of my favorite people in the book club, and I honestly don't know that I've ever read an Australian book, which is kind of embarrassing. This, I think, is a pretty famous novel and also a movie about a group of girls who go on a picnic and they never return, and that is all I know. It's apparently got a dreamy atmosphere. It's also 100% unequivocally set in like the Australian summer, but Australian summer is in December, in December, so just a couple months. So I'm almost matching it up, but not even by that metric does this quite make sense as a fall book. Psychological horror, though. That's what I want in a fall read. It can be set in summer. Next up is Rosemary's Baby. Please ignore the sprayed edges. This is what, when you put your little art on your hardcover sprayed edges, this is what I'm thinking of, by the way. We need to stop doing sprayed edges for all books. Rosemary's Baby, you heard my praise for the Stepford Wives. This is Ira Levin's more famous work. I have heard of Rosemary's Baby just like as a thing, but I have got it muddled enough in my head with Sophie's Choice that I actually at this point no longer have any idea what Rosemary's Baby is about. And that is how I would prefer to go into it. I really appreciated Levin's style and skill in the Stepford Wives, and I trust that he'll do a good job with this one too. And I think both of us are going to like it a lot. Finally, we have The Haunting of Hill House, which I put in here mostly as a joke because this has appeared on, I'm pretty sure, every single TBR I've ever made, and I'm never going to read it. I'm not picking this up. You can see my partner is currently reading it, wants me to read it so we can talk about it. Even that is not compelling me to pick this fucking book up. I won't. I refuse. You can't make me. Though this is a classic, the classic haunted house novel, so it's a great October read, but we all know it's not happening. All right, now really quickly, I'm going to go through my 3 nonfiction books that I would love to read. This is Perfect Victims and the Politics of Appeal. I just bought this at the Anarchist Book Fair. This is an urgent affirmation of the Palestinian condition of resistance and refusal, an ode to the steadfastness of a nation. I saw this in one of the Palestine sections, and I opened it up, and the writing seems to be very beautiful while being a nonfiction book, and also it has relatively short chapters, which I think at this point in my life is what I need out of nonfiction. There was a time when it was all I read, when I really thought I was going to succeed as a social work major. I read so much nonfiction, and now I can't force myself to do it, but there are so many things that I would like to learn. I want to know what this book has to say desperately, and yet, am I going to pick it up? Probably not. But I hope that you do. I also have You Will Not Kill Our Imagination. This is a memoir of Palestine and writing in the dark times. I think this comes out in just a couple of days. I'm holding an ARC. I think this also looks very, very beautifully written. Much bigger words on the pages of this book, so maybe I'll start with this. Maybe I need to use memoir to ease myself back into reading nonfiction. People who read nonfiction are so fucking cool. I can't believe I took for granted how cool I was when I was reading nonfiction. Finally, we have Salvation, Black People and Love by Bell Hooks. This is the second book that comes after All About Love. I feel like everybody reads All About Love. Nobody continues the series. I also bought this at the Anarchist Book Fair. I think it's going to be great. I have this idea in my head that all of the books in this series are just finding me at the right time. And I think this is the right time for me to read this, and I'm excited about it. All right, let's get into the scary books, the October reads. I'm really hoping that we're going to get to these in the next couple of weeks because they're a great vibe setter, especially if you're somewhere like I am, which has been unseasonably warm and very unfall-esque. Let's start with what are, as far as I can tell, the most classic genre fiction novels, because if there's a time where I can stomach that, it's right now. First up is Mary by Nat Cassidy. This has been sitting on my shelf for a hot fucking minute, a couple of months. I had no idea this wasn't an image until I looked at it right now. That's a painting. Did you know that? I had no clue. Anyway, this has been collecting dust because I hate how tall it is. And I'm also really wary of a man writing a book about menopause. But like I said about the Stepford Wives, some men can do it. It's infrequent, but it is a possibility. And with the amount that I have had this book recommended to me, and I've had people tell me, I get it, but he actually does do a good job, it must be fantastic, or everybody has really low standards. I believe that this is either a possession story or a descent into madness story, and either way I think it'll be a great, fun, violent, gory time, and a really great Halloween read if you haven't read it, because I feel like everyone's read this. But like, are you joking? It's so tall. I don't want to hold this in my hands while I read it. I'm such an asshole. Okay, next on the list is Haunted by Chuck Palahniuk. I have seen this around kind of in like the Reddit horror spaces, which is also, I think, where I've seen Mary recommended the most. So I'm a little bit nervous about both of these. This is the guy who wrote Fight Club, and this is supposed to be really, really disturbing. I think it's like a novel told through 20 or something short stories that are horrifying and scary. And look, that's Halloween. That's Halloween. I don't know anything about this book. I'm sorry, but it's on the list and you have to read it. Next up is Andrew Joseph White's newest book, You Weren't Meant to Be Human, which was very kindly sent to me by the people at Aardvark Bookbox. This follows a trans man during an alien invasion-induced apocalypse who gets pregnant and is forced by the community of people who has protected him from the dangerous outside world to give birth. And he fights back against it, and it all goes to shit, and it sounds absolutely fucking horrific. Like true, pure horror. Some wisps of Manhunt by Gretchen Felker Martin in this, but I think that is just me like generalizing. I don't know. It feels like they have very similar settings, and obviously themes of like incredibly gendered experience during an apocalypse. I don't know. I have heard good things about Andrew Joseph White. I think he usually writes YA, which makes me believe that this is either going to kill it or suck dick and cock at my birthday. And I think we should find out together. Next is a classic of transgressive, disturbing fiction, and that is The Wasp Factory by Iain Banks, which has also been collecting dust on my shelf for a long time. This follows a very troubled young man who gets his feelings out through committing violent acts against innocent, vulnerable creatures. So if you don't want to read about that, skip this one for sure. The narrator's brother has been institutionalized and has recently broken out and is trying to contact him. This one I know is not for the faint of heart, and part of me has been avoiding it because I'm worried that it might be graphic for the sake of violence, but it also must have this longevity for a reason. This came out in 1984. People are still talking about it. I believe that this has an obsessive protagonist and things to say about masculinity and nature versus nurture, and it has the potential to be really good. Grotesque by Natsuo Kirino is next on the list. I read her book Out, and I thought it was slow but really great at building a creeping tension and describing things in the most horrifying ways, and I absolutely fucking hated the ending. Grotesque, like Out, follows a group of women and violence surrounding them. This one is a group of girls at a prestigious high school, giving us context for why some of them are murdered later on in life. Like Out, this explores women in Japanese society, and I have it in my head that this is going to be better than Out was. Out was good enough that I enjoyed it despite viscerally hating that fucking ending, and I still think of it as a good book, just with the caveat. This, I think it's going to be just a thoroughly good book. That's what I've decided. Okay, next up we have a couple of newer releases in the horror genre. The first being If You're Seeing This, It's Meant for You by Leigh Stein, which came out in August and seems to be a kind of like ridiculous, very contemporary, but also gothic novel about a woman whose boyfriend dumps her via Reddit post. So she goes to work for a guy who's trying to turn his dilapidated mansion into a hype house, only to discover that a woman who worked as an online influencer tarot reader has gone missing. It sounds obviously so fucking silly, so stupid, but I think it has the opportunity to be a really fun time. And I also think it has an even greater opportunity to fucking suck. And then we also have Myra by Nikki Gonzalez. This came out in July and follows two friends reconnecting after many years of separation, and everything's just a little bit off. Ingrid doesn't know why Myra has invited her to stay in this house together. It's isolated and it's hard to find. All of a sudden, Myra's weird boyfriend is there, and old fights spring back up once they get together. From what I can tell, this is a slower burn, but like an uncomfortable, disquieting one, exploring the impact of friendship and acceptance. Sort of related to the themes of Myra is Ling Ling Huang's newest novel, Immaculate Conception. Now, I read Natural Beauty, and I thought it was a great premise that was pretty well executed, but had exhaustingly purple prose. So I'm really excited to see how she's evolved as a writer with this new work. Immaculate Conception is about a really intense, obsessive friendship between two women who meet at art school, and when they start drifting apart, the narrator is so desperate that she enlists the use of a new technology that will link their minds forever. Like Natural Beauty, this looks to be some very character character-focused and literary speculative fiction, which is always exciting for me. Okay, next isn't a new release. It's The Harpy by Megan Hunter, which is about a woman who learns that her husband is having an affair and she strikes a deal with him. They'll stay together, but to even the playing field, to level out the score, she gets to hurt him 3 times. During their cat and mouse dynamic, her mind and body both start changing, I think in a body horror kind of way. It's sort of a fairy tale. It's definitely a little novella. This book I've heard really positive things about, both the story and the writing, and I'm excited to finally get around to it. We're kind of starting to transition out of the October horror reads, but I do also have Paradise Rot by Jenny Hall on this list. This is a book I've been seeing around forever. Known to me as the piss book. I think there's a lot of peeing in this. It's about a weird relationship between 2 university-aged roommates. I think the narrator descends into madness. It's like a bit queer. It's a bit gross. I've definitely heard some mixed reviews on this. I don't think it's anyone's favorite book, but the premise does seem to align with my tastes, so I need to give it a shot. It's also less than 150 pages, so like, who really gets hurt if it's not that good? Okay, now I have 4 short story collections because I am getting back into short stories this fall if it fucking kills me, and you're coming with me. The first is everyone's favorite short story collection, and that is Rejection by Tony Tulatamudi. This is a series of interconnected stories about people who don't handle rejection very well. Like a young man who realizes that his feminist gambit isn't getting him pussy. People in this are obsessive, and their obsession makes them make choices that ruin their lives. All of the people in the book club who have read this have been singing its praises and begging me to get on it, and I'm going to. And it's going to convert me back into a short story reader, and then I'm going to read Rag by Maurice Meyer. This is a very short, disturbing horror collection featuring stories that follow people like an isolated man whose job it is to euthanize dogs, a college student who becomes friends with a shut-in who may or may not be human, and other lonely people so desperate for human connection that they go to great lengths. This book supposedly forces you to feel empathy for the troubled people on the very outskirts of society, and I always fucking love that shit. I've also got Cursed Bunny by Bora Chung on my short stories list. This one I've been meaning to read for it feels like my entire life. It's a mix of genres, which I always love in a collection. Specifically, magical realism, I think, is a genre that lends itself so well to the short story. The write-up for this says that Chung uses elements of the fantastic and surreal to address the very real horrors and cruelties of patriarchy and capitalism in modern society, which sounds fucking awesome. And then finally, for short stories, we have Good and Evil and Other Stories, which is the newest work of Samantha Schweblin's to be translated into English. We read Fever Dream in the book club earlier this year. This whole video feels like a fucking ad for the book club. I keep mentioning it. We read it, and it is like a beloved late relative the way we talk about this book. The Fever Dream discussion video is absolutely my magnum opus for book videos. You should definitely read Fever Dream. After just that one short book, I trust Samantha Schweblin with my whole life. So I don't need to know anything more about this collection. I know that it's something that I want to read. Because this list isn't long enough as is, let's also cover the general fiction that I'm fiending for this fall and that you will read alongside me or you're gonna get a failing grade in Frankie's shelf. Okay, first we have The Rabbit Hutch by Tess Gunty. My mom and I both bought this. This is straight literary fiction that has been really well received ever since it came out. My mom and I are planning on doing a little book club of our own with this. The Rabbit Hutch follows a group of people who have just aged out of their state's foster care system. It takes place over the course of 1 week, and it ends in a shocking act of violence. It explores dying towns and freedom and entrapment and community and isolation, and it seems like the perfect mix of my mom and I's tastes, and I'm very excited to talk about it with her. After that, we have Bad Nature by Ariel Courage. This is a book that I've only read the first sentence of the summary, and that was enough to get me to immediately put it on hold. Listen to this. When Hester is diagnosed with terminal cancer on her 40th birthday, she knows immediately what she must do. Abandon her possessions and drive to California to kill her estranged father. Fuck yes. So it is a road trip novel, which is admittedly very summer, but it's also a revenge novel, which maybe fits with fall. I don't need to justify this. The summary made it sound so interesting. I want to read it as soon as I can. Next up is Happiness and Love by Zoe Dubno. This follows a woman over the course of just one night during an insufferable dinner party with her ex-best friends from the art world. I love to be frustrated by characters in a book, and this seems like it's gonna deliver on that. Maybe so much so that it's going to make me question if I really do like that. From what I can tell, the narrator just sits there judging everyone, but also she's kind of in the right to do it. And then the evening ends in some sort of disaster. I'm worried that this will be a little bit preachy with claiming fascinating to explore like materialism and self-obsession within the cultural elitism in the art world, but I also think it might just be a fun and absolutely exhausting time. Pan by Michael Clune is about a 15-year-old kid who starts having panic attacks for the first time, and he decides that the Greek god Pan lives inside of his body. Insane premise, give it to me. We're just about at the end here. We have 2 books by Akwaeke Emeze, who I've been meaning to get to forever. First is their debut, Freshwater. This follows a Nigerian woman with a fractured psyche who has multiple selves, and they internally fight for power. It seems like it's going to be a really, really heavy and impactful read. Then we have Little Rot, which maybe is like mildly more lighthearted, though definitely still really dark. This follows a group of friends caught up in their city's underworld and the lengths that they'll go to save themselves and each other. Says it ends in a shattering denouement, which you got me. Next, we have Indelicacy by Amina Kane. This is a very short novel about a woman who works as a cleaner in an art gallery, and then I believe she marries rich, and then has to grapple with the fact that now other women are cleaning for her, and she takes a drastic solution of some sort. I have heard very good things, and it's been on my list forever, and I saw it at the library and I couldn't help but pick it up. Finally, last book of the video, we have Moderation by Elaine Castillo, another book that the people at Art of Arc Bookbox very kindly sent me. This is about a woman who works as a content moderator and her weird, intense family and a promotion at work where she now works in virtual reality moderation. I've read the first couple pages of this, and I think the writing style is captivating, and I'm already really interested in the characters, and I'm excited to find out if this is the great content moderation novel, because let me tell you, we had to remove this post, was not. Anyway, there's the delusional required reading list for your fall semester. We are all going to get to all of these, and if you don't, I'm going to come to your house. Okay, bye.